Page 1. Black. I admit it. I've been scared shitless lots of times, but I was never as shook as when the gun in Eddie's hand went off. It thundered inside that car like the whole world was coming to an end. I never expected Eddie to pull the trigger by accident or any other way. I guess that was a big part of it, too. In all the time Eddie had that gun, we never shot it off once. It was just for show, so we could get our hands on some quick money, that's all. We never flashed it around in front of our friends or anything. It was just for us to know about. I was more scared for that man we shot than anything else. I didn't even know he got clipped in the head until Eddie told me later. The gun went off and I closed my eyes. I shut them so tight, I thought my eyelids would squeeze them right out of their sockets. I only opened them again to find the handle on the door so I could get out of the car and take off running. That damn sound was ringing in my ears. There was no way to outrun that. I couldn't hear the air pumping in and out of my lungs or the sound of my feet hitting against the concrete. And I didn't know that Eddie wasn't right behind me until I was halfway home and peeked back over my shoulder. Then I looked back for him again, even though I knew he wasn't there. I ran to my crib on instinct, and I guess Eddie did the same, but I wished he was right there with me to explain what happened. I had to know right then. My brain was going twice as fast as my feet. I didn't know how to slow it down or what to think about first. I just needed to tell Eddie I had seen that man someplace before. I could still see his round black face in front of me, like he was somebody I passed in the streets 100 times. And I was praying to God with every breath I took that man wasn't dead. But almost everybody outside my family calls me Black. That's because they're used to seeing me all the time with my boy, Eddie Russo. Eddie is white. Kids who are different colors don't get to be that tight in my neighborhood, but we got past all that racial crap until we were almost like real blood brothers. So somebody came up with the tag Black and White for us, and it stuck. It got more hype because we played basketball and football for Long Island City High School. We were two of the best players they ever had. Everybody who goes there knows about us. We even made the newspapers for winning big games a couple of times. Scouts from lots of colleges came to see us play. Some of them wanted to sign up the both of us and keep what we had going, but that's all finished with now. I don't remember if the idea of robbing people came up before Eddie snuck out his dead grandfather's gun or not. Once the two of those things were square in front of us, they fit together right. We weren't trying to get rich off it, we were just looking for enough money to keep up. Lots of kids we knew either hustled drugs for their loot or pulled little stick-ups on the street. But drug dealers and ball players usually hold down opposite ends of the park, shooting looks at each other over who runs the place. That's how it was for Eddie and me with them. The football team always had 2 or 3 posses that ripped people off. They would wave their dough around at parties and latch on to the best girls. Some of them even brought rides with their money, while Eddie and me wore out the bottoms of our good kicks walking. And whenever those dudes went out to celebrate after a big win, we were like 2 charity cases. Then word started getting out among the right females, Black and White were strictly welfare. Eddie's family has more money than mine. They live 2 blocks down and across the street from the Ravenswood houses, in a private house with a front porch. Eddie has a mother and a father, and they both work. Eddie gets an allowance that's only a little bigger than what I get to go to school with every week, but if Eddie ever needed $20 for something, he could put his hands out and probably get it. My mother has always been tight like that. The only money coming in is from her sewing jobs, and with a state censor every month to take care of me and my little sister. Senior dues were $150, and the end of February was the deadline. You either paid it or missed out on everything good that went along with graduating, like the class trips to Bear Mountain and Six Flags. It took me almost 3 months to save that kind of money. Eddie put a lock on his wallet too, and we were just about there. Then around the middle of January, Nike came out with the new Marauders. Everybody on the basketball team was buying a pair because they came in maroon and powder blue, the same as our school colors. We were the main attraction on that squad. There was no way we were getting caught behind the times like that. So we spent most of our dough on new basketball kicks. That left us with just over a month to get the money we needed for dues. We didn't know how we'd do it, but we made a pact that either both of us would come up with the cash or we'd miss out on everything together. Teenagers can get a job easy in some places like McDonald's or Burger King's. It's honest, but it's low rent too. Kids at school and around our way already treated us like stars, and we were going to be even bigger one day, first in college and then the pros. So we decided Black and White shouldn't be serving up fries in those stupid hats for everybody to see. Besides, there was almost no way to juggle going to practice every day and having a job. That's when Eddie first snuck out the gun, thinking we could sell it. We knew a kid who paid almost $300 for a .38 caliber just like it, but Eddie's father knew where the gun was supposed to be and might go looking for it one day. Eddie couldn't blame something like that on his sister. His father would have known it was him straight off. So we figured that we would borrow the gun any time, then put it back. That's how we came to do stick-ups. We kicked it around a lot first, and knew everything we could lose. But it was only going to be a problem if we got caught. Eddie and me weren't going to be that dumb. We were just going to pull enough stick-ups to get the money for dues. Then we'd call it quits. Eddie was sold on the idea before I was. It'll be too easy, he said, and whenever we can take, we deserve. That hit something inside me and pushed me over the line. We knew enough not to rob other kids. They could get stupid right in the middle of it, or might have a posse of their own and come back after us. We were just looking for a payday, not a war. Adults are just easier. Most of them don't want any trouble. They're scared of kids they don't know. And unless you get unlucky and try to heist an off-duty cop or corrections officer, you're usually home free. We even thought about taking the bullets out of the gun just to play it safe, but growing up, kids all around my way would boost little things from the stores, like candy and soda. If you got caught, the owners would beat your ass good before they'd ever think about calling the cops. But I was more worried about what my mother would do to me, and how it would make her feel to know her only son was a thief. It wasn't worth it to me back then. I would rather watch everyone else getting over than turn my own mother against me. But things were different now. I was already 17. I had to start pulling my own weight until playing ball paid off in cash. It was the same for Eddie. He was my best friend and the only one I would ever trust on something like this. We practiced coming up on people over and over. Eddie said we should watch how they did it on TV because they copied things like that from the way it really goes down. So we worked on it, like any play we ever ran in a game. Then we scouted out good-sized parking lots just off the end of Steinway Street, where people shopping might have some real cheese on them. The lot was laid out in front of a P.C. Richards electronics store, and always deep with rows of cars. There was a big hardware store on one side of it, a movie theater on the other, and a pizza restaurant across the street. There was a sign that read, "Parking for P.C. Richard customers only." But we watched, and everyone going into those other places used that lot too. In between everything, there was a little park without a basketball hoop. It just had kiddie things in it, like a seesaw and a jungle gym set. It was empty during the day because of the cold, and we knew it would be the same at night, so we used it as a sort of base to look things over. Our first time out, it took almost an hour before we moved. We sat on the swings going back and forth, figuring out if we had the nerve to pull it off or not. Lots of people walked by alone, but we just watched them all. Then we started dissing each other about who was going to chicken out first. When all that ran dry, we got quiet and moved closer to the gate. We picked out a white lady carrying a shopping bag. She walked real slow. That was good for us because we wanted to keep our timing right. Eddie and me were walking even with each other, maybe 20 feet apart, and if that lady had turned around, she never would have thought we were together. We waited until she got all the way to her car. Then Eddie came up from behind and showed her the gun. She got hysterical right away and started to cry. I took the package out of her hand so she could open her pocketbook. Her wallet was sitting right on the top. She was so scared she couldn't pull it out. Finally, Eddie reached in and grabbed it. Then we got our asses out of there quick. I didn't want to throw the lady's package down in the street and have somebody take a second look at us, so I just held on to it tight and dropped my face down behind it. We weren't even a block away when she started screaming for help. I hated the way she sounded. It was like we did something really terrible to her. After that, Eddie and me decided we'd never rob another woman. "It's like, if somebody did that to your mother," Eddie said, "how would you feel?" I was just happy we got away with it. We were so nervous that almost a half hour went by before we looked in her wallet. There was $92 inside, so we did a little victory dance and gave each other high fives out behind my building. We looked at that picture on her driver's license for a second, but neither one of us wanted to know her name. Then we walked a couple of blocks and threw his wallet into a big trash bin behind a supermarket, credit cards and all. The package. Eddie said he wanted me to keep it for acting so smart and holding on to it. I scratched up the cover so it wouldn't look like it was right out of the box. Then I gave it to my little sister. Mother, I found it outside the earphones plugged into her head for a week. Every time I saw her with it, I thought about what Eddie and me had done. 2 weeks after that, We robbed an old white man just before the stores closed that night. We were about to step to him when somebody passed by out of nowhere. Eddie and me just froze for 5 or 6 seconds. When I looked up again, the man was already halfway into his car. I was surprised when Eddie went ahead and pulled the gun on him anyway. His face turned mean looking. He made the man slide over and got into the driver's seat next to him. Then Eddie unlocked the back door and I got in too. I came to the man to empty all his pockets. It seemed much because my eyes were glued to the side window watching for trouble. But after the man took out his money, he had his eyes shut tight. Eddie grabbed the man's car keys and left them on his back bumper. Cops probably won't even find them back there, Eddie said. I walked away fast, with confidence. That job got us $129 in folding money, almost $3 in loose change, and a token to drive across the Triborough Bridge. I remember we stopped at the McDonald's underneath the train tracks on Broadway, and each had 2 quarter-pounders with cheese. Then we left the token on the table, like a tip for anybody who wanted it. Between our loot and what we had saved, there was enough for dues. We held on to the money over the weekend just to look at it some more, but when we went to pay that Monday, the school secretary got bent out of shape because it was March 1st already. Eddie knows how to fast-talk most people good, and he didn't waste a second after the last word out of her mouth. He told her I was busy celebrating Black History Month, that he thought it was a leap year, and February had the 1 extra day to it. She smiled at all that nonsense and made us each out a receipt. We were happy the way everything turned out, but we're flat broke again. It all went down too easy to just walk away, and neither one of us mentioned quitting the stick-up business. On the next Friday night, after basketball practice, before we left, Coach Casey called everyone over the bleachers and gave us his usual speech for the weekend. I know the city never sleeps, but try not to get into anything stupid over the next couple of days, Casey told the team. Don't get into fights and don't get locked up. Do your families a favor. Stay home at night and study. I want to see everybody back here on Monday the way we left. Eddie and me would always smile at each other while Casey talked like that. Not because we didn't appreciate it, but because we knew his rap inside out. We heard him make that same speech every Friday for almost 4 years. Casey was solid with us. On our way up to Steinway Street, Eddie asked me if I wanted to be the one to hold the gun this time. It felt good in my hands a couple of times I played around with it, but I didn't have any real practice pulling it out on somebody. Eddie had been perfect twice already. I didn't want to screw things up, so I took a pass. It was freezing out that night. We started to shiver, waiting in the back of the parking lot across from the park. We had our lives locked onto everything around us, looking for somebody easy. We even passed on a man with a cane because it didn't feel right. The wind came up strong against us. Eddie said that holding the gun was like squeezing a piece of ice, and his fingers were going numb, so I let him have my gloves. After a while, I started blowing into my hands to keep them warm. I could see my breath coming out between my fingers, and anybody who saw us there probably thought we were smoking weed. The man was just a shadow to me when he first came out of that hardware store. It was really dark, and he had his coat buttoned all the way up around his neck. Eddie gave me a nod, and I nodded right back. I didn't even know the man who was black until we walked up to him, and Eddie told him it was a stick-up.